And for some perspective on all this, we turn to the Washington Post's Amber Phillips. She writes about politics for The Fix. Amber, good morning.
Morning.
Well, let's start with the president's alleged comments. Coming at a time when lawmakers are trying to work out a deal on immigration reform. What is it? How does this affect that, do you think?
It's not clear. So to one degree, Congress is really used to the president distracting them. It doesn't usually cause an international incident, right? But they've kind of been able to compartmentalize some of what the president says and say, okay, we're going to work around you to try to get tax reform done. But this is so high profile, and it just throws a bomb into all this really explosive already immigration debate that it's possible both sides retreat to their corners and make compromise a lot less likely. And they weren't anywhere close to compromise even before it was released. The president allegedly said this.
Politically, how does this play with the president's base, Amber? We know Republican senators like Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham are effectively confirming some of the comments the president made. But what about the people that support the president?
Yeah, so it's hard to answer that without any public polling, but I can tell you that the media that kind of supports the president, and a lot of the base listens to that media, like Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson on Fox News, are defending the president. Right off the bat, they're saying, you know what, this is our president getting tough on immigration. This is exactly what we want him to hear. Way to stand up to those guys in Washington who are too politically correct. So it is entirely possible that there is no fallout from the president's base for this.
On the whole immigration question, I want to talk about the Dreamers issue and trying to get a deal. There's a deadline on March 5th that's set by the president. I mean, how likely is a deal at this point?
That's such a good question. This is one of those things where everyone in Washington agrees something needs to get done, but they can't figure out how to do it. There's two main reasons for that. One is the president's wall. Democrats tell me if he demands money for his border wall, they're out. It is just such a symbol of everything they despise about the president. They cannot negotiate on that. There's also a sizable chunk of Republicans on the right who are okay not protecting Dreamers. They see it as amnesty, people like Steve King in Iowa. And when you put those together, you don't have a majority of Congress to agree to a deal.
This is not just about immigration either. We're talking about keeping the government up and running.
Yep.
Is the government going to shut down, Amber?
Oh, my gosh. I'm trying to figure that out. I feel like every week it's like 50-50 at this point. And that's my answer to that is Congress has two options. They can somehow pass a long-term budget that has eluded them since September. They could agree on just a short-term budget to kick the can down the road for a couple months.
Right.
Even that, with all the news and all the drama that's happened this week, could be difficult. It's just Democrats are debating, do we try to seize this moment where President Trump, they feel, is weak, to demand there's protections for Dreamers? Because it's Republicans, they're calculating, who would be blamed for a shutdown because they control all of Washington. You
mentioned all the drama that's happened this week. With all that drama, it's hard to believe it was way back on Tuesday that Steve Bannon stepped down from Breitbart News. Way back on Tuesday.
That was a year ago.
Yeah.
It feels like a year ago already.
News years, it was 1,000 years ago.
What's the impact, do you think, of that on the whole right-wing movement that he was trying to propel?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So when Steve Bannon was at Breitbart and had the ear of the president, he was planning to unseat or at least challenge almost every single Senate Republican incumbent up for election this year. That is now thrown completely in doubt. He really doesn't have a platform to do that. And we saw as soon as Steve Bannon left, some of the right-wing challengers like in Arizona and Nevada and Wisconsin stepped away from Steve Bannon a little bit because they feel like when given the choice, if it's Bannon or Trump, voters are going to want me to side with Trump.
Speaking of the other things that happened this week, we had heard some rumors that Robert Mueller may actually interview President Trump. Where do things stand on that front in terms of the investigation? Yeah,
so the Washington Post reported that in December, Robert Mueller's lawyers went to Trump's lawyers and said, we think we want to interview the president. Let's start talking about terms. And there's so much negotiations that go into getting a president to sit down with an ongoing investigation. President Trump earlier this year had suggested, or excuse me, said outright, 100% was his comment. I would testify under oath, saying there's no collusion. He backed away from that this week. he said in press conferences, you know, I don't know if I'm going to testify because there isn't any collusion, and that throws into doubt the whole negotiation. So we'll see if Mueller can get the president to sit down with him.
Throws into doubt could be the banner headline from this week. Amber Phillips with the Washington Post. Thanks, Amber.